Good morning, y'all. We got a quick job we are going to knock out today that hopefully will help a few folks out. So let's take a step outside. We're going to be working outside the shop today. My Blazer is stuck on the lift until I figure out what lift kit is on it so I can order the leaf spring bushings. So we get to work on the ground today. Well, we got a 2017 Lexus GS350 F-sport. So today we're going to be knocking out the rear brakes on this bad boy. As you see here, we're going to be doing it in the driveway. So if you have one of these, you're trying to save a couple dollars, it is an easy job. Just take some basic hand tools. There may be like a caliper ratcheting tool I may suggest. You don't have to have it. I'll show you both ways of doing it. But on that note, also, I will have a link up here in the descriptions to an Amazon shopping list. It will have the brake pads, hardware, the caliper ratcheting tool if we use it, and anything else that you need. If you'd like to order that and wait a couple days, that really helps us out. They give us some kickbacks. Otherwise, you can get the stuff at your auto parts store. But that's enough of that. We're going to go ahead and just dive right into this thing. So step number one is, before you do anything and get it jacked up, what you need to check is these cars have an automatic parking brake. If you come into the cab, you'll see you have your start stop button. Below that is the parking brake button with an auto button above it. Just make sure whenever you pull your car up in your driveway, you have the auto off and the parking brake is not on. So that the auto has a green light on it. So if it's on, it always sets the parking brake. So just make sure that is off. And then you'll want to also pop your hood. So we are going to get under here. This version of this Lexus is an all-wheel drive, by the way. So I don't have to chalk the front tires. If you have a rear-wheel drive, you will need to chalk the front tires before you jack the rear end up, and we'll just go ahead and do that just as an extra safety precaution anyway. But with the hood open, go ahead and take your brake fluid cap off. So this one just pulls off. It's just a rubber cap. We'll set that there at the side. That way there's no back pressure when we're depressing the calipers and pushing fluid back up in the system. And then I'm going to grab a block of wood, or actually I have like this little metal bracket I use to prop my door open. I'll grab that and put it behind the front tire. And then we are going to go ahead and jack this puppy up and get started. All right, and here we go to get these brakes off. So step number one is going to be getting your tire off. The lug nuts are a 21 millimeter, so you'll shoot those with an impact. If you're going to use hand tools like a 4-way or just like a giant breaker bar, make sure that you have the tire on the ground and you break the lug nuts loose before you jack it up and put it on your jack stand. But otherwise, here we go. I'm going to rip this off. We'll get the tire set to the side, and then we will take a look at the brakes. All right, so here we are with the tire off. And we're going to come over here to our brake caliper, and step number one is we're going to release the caliper retaining bolts, which are up here. They're 14 millimeter. I have a 13 in my hand for some reason. So we have a 14 millimeter. There's one here and one down here on the bottom where my finger's at. You're also going to need a 14 millimeter wrench. You're going to hold this part of the caliper slide with the wrench while you break it loose. Then you can shoot them out. So we'll pick up after I get these bolts loose, and I'll show you how to pull this out. All right, I got both caliper slide bolts out and in my hand. So then once you've done that, you can literally just grab this puppy, gently wiggle it back, set it up. Here, if you have a bungee cord, you can bungee cord it up. Just make sure you don't hang it by the brake line. Right, you just want it up there nice and secure. So once you get there, you can pull your pads, and I'll show you something here. So here is our front pad, which actually, if you look at it, has a good amount of meat left on it. And the back pad, this side's a lot better. So the squeaking side was the driver's side. I'm going to show you a trick that a lot of people overlook. So you have these are called caliper slides. You see how that one was kind of stuck, and this bottom one will also be kind of stuck. I'm going to grab it with my fingers, pull it back. But now you see how this slides in and out? When you apply your brake pressure, right, this compresses in as the caliper squeezes, and then it's supposed to release a little bit, and then the caliper can slide back to not drag brake pads on the rotor. These get stuck, especially the older they get, the grease kind of wears out, or they'll just compress in too deep and they'll get stuck a little bit, and then it can't slide out, and it will wear down one pad more than the other. So like the back pad will be pressed on with a little more pressure than the front. on standard driving. So you always want to check these caliper slides if you need to re-grease them, right? If they're real stuck and they don't move freely, like these ones are totally fine. They were just kind of towards the end and stuck a little bit, so you just need to work them. But you can slide this boot back with your fingers. Yep. I'm going to take two hands for this. I don't have a good way to film it, but essentially, maybe, there we go. All right, so you take those, then you can pull the whole slide out. So now they have, and I'll have it linked on my list up in the video, caliper slide grease, and then you'll basically just clean this off, reapply grease, reinsert it, make sure, work it in and out, make sure it moves good, and then put this boot back on. You just want to make sure these puppies can move nice and freely before you continue. And now that we have the pads out and we've checked our caliper slides, we're going to go ahead and remove the caliper bracket. The caliper bracket is held on with two 17mm bolts, one right here and one down here at the bottom. These boogers are going to be tight, so you're going to need a pretty long handled ratchet. I'm using this guy right here with a stubby 17, and it's going to take a good oomph to break them loose, but once they break loose, they'll come right out. Once you get the two bolts out, the bracket literally just slides right off like that. You can set it to the side, and now we need to get our rotor off. So you can feel the lips on your rotor. A lot of guys will feel it if it's still smooth. Like this one has a little tiny wavy bit on the back, but this front side is very smooth. There are probably guys out there who wouldn't touch this thing. They would just put the new pads on and go. That's really not the right way of doing it. I'm gonna go take both of these to get them turned. O'Reilly's does it. Pretty much any auto parts store will turn a rotor. Even if it's not grooved, a lot of times there's at least a little bit of warping over time from all the different heat exchanges and going through puddles and things. So you always want to make sure you start with a fresh, flat rotor. It doesn't have to be a new one, but at least go get them turned. So in the case of getting these rotors off, one, make sure you deactivated the parking brake like we talked about in the beginning of the video, but they're still going to be stuck on there pretty good. What we're going to do is we're going to beat around the center part, make sure you do not hit the lugs. We'll hit here, and we'll hit here, out here on the meat of this metal, and we're just going to keep banging on it, going around until it comes free. You can also pull this plug out down here, get a flathead screwdriver in there, and adjust your parking brake and loosen it to where it's not holding it as good. That is a method of doing this. Sometimes they pop right off, sometimes they're a pain, but I'll actually try and get you a view over here, and you can see how long and how hard I'm having to hit this thing. There we go. All right, and you saw there all this hammering I did. You're always hitting the face of the rotor or this beveled edge of the rotor. Never hit the braking surface face. That's where we're going to get turned. If you look at the back side here, you can see the marks on the back there. We got just a tiny bit of grooving, some serious heat wear. But there we have it. While you have the rotors off, always check your parking brakes. We're going to clean this with some brake cleaner before we reassemble, but we will pick up at that part whenever I get back with these freshly turned rotors. So I got my rotors up at the parts store. They're getting turned currently. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get this all prepped up on both sides and ready to go, so when the rotors get here I can just start putting everything back together. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to get yourself like a piece of red Scotch-Brite like this, maybe a little wire brush depending on what you got. I like to use red Scotch-Brite. This surface on the hub where the rotor mounts to, you see the rust in here. What we're going to do is we're going to clean that up a little bit. That's why they get so stuck on there. So what you want to do is you want to just take your Scotch-Brite and scrub around this puppy like so, and then after we get this rust knocked off a good bit, then what we'll do is we're going to douse this whole thing with brake cleaner, which I'll come back for that. But I mean, we're literally just going to spray the sucker down a couple of times and let her dry. But let me get this cleaned up and then I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. All right, we're all scrubbed down, so now we're just going to douse it down with brake cleaner. You want to get that hub, and you want to get all of the brake pads. We're just trying to knock all the brake dust off the parking brake area. Just get it as clean as we can get it before we put it back together. So here we go. Last step before we are ready to reinstall is to depress this caliper. So you'll see I got this fancy tool in here. This is called a brake caliper depressing tool. It is works as a ratchet. So you have this little switch here. You can flip this switch, right, to change the direction of it, and we'll get it tight, and we're just going to ratchet this puppy, and it will spread the caliper until it's nice and flush again, and then we'll back it off and take it out. You don't have to have one of these. I will have a link to this in the shopping list I showed earlier, that is also in the description, along with all the other parts. But you can use an old brake pad, which I'll show you. I'm going to go ahead and depress this one real quick. I'll let you see how it works. But you know, this is awesome to have if you do brakes, you know, multiple times a year. You have multiple cars you're going to do it on. They're pretty much universal. But if you don't do brakes very often, you can do the old C-clamp trick. But for now, let me go ahead and set you over here to the side, if I can figure out a good place to set you. And then I will show you how this works. Start depressing, and there it goes. Now we're ratchet. There you go, simple as that. Now our caliper piston is completely depressed again and ready to go back on. All right, so if you don't want to order a ratcheting tool, or you don't have one, but you do have a C-clamp on hand, which by the way, those tools are like 15 bucks. I think they cost almost the same as a C-clamp. So if you're gonna order one thing, I would suggest that. But if you already have a C-clamp and you want to do the old fashioned way that you've never seen before, take an old brake pad like this, flip it over, set it against the piston, which will be out there, put the cranking end in this way, and fish the backside on the backside of the caliper. So you'll put the clamp around it, and you just hand crank it, and you can slide it all the way back in. But I like my little nifty ratcheting tool. There you go. We are ready to reinstall the rotor and put the brakes back together. Well, I'm getting ready to hit the road to grab the calipers, but it looks like it might rain, so I'm going to do this now. And this is totally fine if you want to jump up. After you depress your calipers, and they're compressed, ready to go back on, then you no longer have the need to have your brake reservoir open. So if you look in here, you can see how much more fluid is in there from getting pushed back up in the reservoir. So we're going to go ahead, put our brake cap back on. Oops, sorry, I was filming me, not the cap. Click the cap back on, and we're going to close the hood just in case it rains. Everything else here can get a little wet. It gets wet on the road, so not worried about that at all. But I just wanted to make sure that that was put away. You can wait to the very end when you're complete. Doesn't really matter, just don't forget to put that cap on. All right, let's dive right into it. So I got the caliper bracket here. You can do this on the car, you can do this wherever you need to do it. But yeah, first things we're gonna do is we're gonna pull out the pad hardware from the caliper bracket to replace it. Your new set will come with new hardware. I like to do them one at a time, so I make sure that the orientation stays the same as from the factory. If you flip it over, this spring, if you put them in backwards, basically this spring would be on the top side, not the bottom side. It doesn't look like from a force application or from a travel standpoint that would actually affect anything, but I still like to keep it as it should be. So I'll keep the camera down here. Hopefully you can see this. I like to go in, I'll go in this one, just find a tab you can get to with a flathead, and we'll just twist and pop it right off just like that. So dust that off with our finger, and now we will find a matching piece in the hardware kit. So see, this hardware, if I was to put it in, would put the spring on the top instead of on the bottom. And obviously top and bottom are relative, but it would be opposite of the other side and opposite of how it came out. So this spring is the correct one. So then to install it, you literally just put it in here with your thumb and press it on down till it's nice and flush. See? And make sure there's nothing lipping over on the inside, because this is where your rotor rides, obviously, so nothing can hang over because we don't want it to drag on the rotor. So I'm gonna go ahead and replace the other three. and then I will show you how to grease a caliper slide, even though mine doesn't need to be done. I got all my hardware swapped out. Before I do the caliper, actually, I wanted to show you this little trick. So if you have some red lithium grease, or you can even use the synthetic caliper grease we're going to use on the caliper, you need to just take a small tiny dabble on your finger, and on these springs you're just going to rub just a smidgen of grease right here on all these metal surfaces that are going to touch the pad, and that will help prevent premature squeaking in the future. Not actually sure if there's a lot of validity to that statement, but an old timer showed me this one time, and I've just been kind of doing it ever since. So it's not going to hurt anything as long as you don't get the grease on the rotor and in the pads, so who cares. Let's dive into a caliper. So if your slides are sticky, right, and you need to re-grease them, so we'll do just like we showed out there, where you pull it, just hold the rubber down with your fingers and pull the caliper slide right out like that. Once you get it out, we're going to take a rag, we're going to wipe it down. If you have a bunch of like worn on grimies, which I don't have, but sometimes you'll see some like texture there, you can take a red Scotch-Brite pad and just gently roll it around in the Scotch-Brite, and then douse it with brake cleaner. Just make sure you get it nice and clean and shiny. Then you're going to need some synthetic caliper grease like this jug here, which will also be in the Amazon parts list. But this puppy comes out, it's got a nice brush on it, so you're just going to brush a nice easy layer of grease on here. And once you got that small layer of grease, just stick it back in, work it up and down, whoop, 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 and it will pop right back into the boot, and you're good to go. You just do that to each slide. Like I said, if I get one that's sticking, I just redo all of them. But these feel. So there you go. We got the caliper bracket all ready to go. So we're gonna go back out to the car. Let's get the rotor put on and get our bracket reinstalled. Just like that. There you go. So now I'm gonna show you a quick little trick. If you take a lug nut without having your tire on, you can screw it down. These rotors sit really well on here, but just to be perfect, we'll tighten that up. That will hold the rotor in place so it's not flopping around loosey. That works really, really well for the front side. Now, we're getting ready to put the caliper brackets on. With the caliper bracket bolts, you want to make sure you put a little bit of Loctite on them. So we're going to put a little dabble of Loctite on each one before we install. Boop. Got one started. Got two started. So these caliper bracket bolts, we're gonna snug them up with the ratchet, with the power ratchet. They have a torque spec on it. I will put torque spec for the caliper bolts on the screen. I use the one torque spec on these, but like I said, there is a spec. I got a buddy who's a fasteners engineer, and he's anal about torque specs, but that is plenty tight for these puppies right there. Like I said, though, it will be on the screen. So now you're going to take your pads. We're going to slide our pads in to our new little clips, just like that. So now the last little thing that I like to have is I like this pink bottle of disc brake quiet. They sell all kinds of different versions of these. They, again, like everything, it'll be linked in the description. But you're just going to take some of this sort of quiet stuff, whichever brand you got. They sell them like by the checkout aisle in auto parts stores. I like this one in particular though. So we're going to dabble this on right where the caliper makes contact on the back of the pads. This is just another method of preventing squeak. We want to prevent any premature squealing and squeaking from these pads. So here we go. You can do the whole back of the pad if you want to. Does not hurt anything. but the only part where you really need it is where your caliper and your caliper piston are going to make contact. So now here we go with the final step. We're going to put this caliper back on. Make sure you don't twist up the brake line. So we saw how mine was starting to twist there. We want this to be nice and not twisted up. So we'll slide it into place and get our bolts in. These also have a torque spec, which I will put on the screen if you want to use it. We're going to use the good old-fashioned hand tightening method. There we go. Shoot that one down. Shoot this one down. Now we'll get down here. That one is perfect. And that one is now perfect. There we go. Now all we gotta do is toss this tire back on and drop this puppy down to the ground. So I'm not gonna show reinstalling the tire, but we'll get the tire put on and then we will get the car back on the ground. And at this point, all you gotta do is, one, don't forget to put your brake cap back on and get your hood closed. And then when you start the car, pump the brakes up before you go for a drive. You got to re-engage this caliper piston and get it back into its position. There's also a brake bedding procedure, which I will put up on the screen now. So once you get the brake pads changed, it is recommended to go out there and do the bedding procedures. A lot of people ignore it. I don't. I go do the drive cycle, but yeah, it's not too bad. It's just a series of stops. I'll have a link in the description to that too if you want to print it off or something while you drive, but it's not too difficult to do. So if this video helped you out, hit the thumbs up button and subscribe.